Nido. Some places do not feel like they belong to the same earth you wake up on every morning, and El Nido is one of them. Not because it tries to impress you, but because it does not have to. Before the town appears, before schedules and tour names begin to matter, there is a quiet moment when Bacuit Bay opens itself to you, and your mind pauses for a second, not from confusion, but from the sudden realization that explanation is not required here. From above, limestone cliffs rise straight out of the sea, sharp and ancient, as if time decided to leave something unfinished on purpose. The water below keeps changing, sliding through jade, turquoise, and deep blue, shifting with the sun, the clouds, and the smallest movement of the wind, as though the bay is breathing in color. Small boats glide slowly across the surface. They look fragile against the scale of the cliffs, leaving thin white trails behind them that fade almost as soon as they appear. From a distance, everything feels perfectly placed, almost too balanced, like a scene designed with intention rather than a landscape shaped by chance. The air carries a different rhythm here. Warm and salty, it settles on your skin and quietly reminds you how fast your life has been moving elsewhere. You begin to notice sounds you usually ignore. Water brushing against wood, an engine humming far away, laughter drifting across the bay, light and unforced, as if the day has already decided to be gentle. Ahead, between two massive walls of stone, there is a narrow opening. From far away it looks insignificant, like a shadow carved into rock, but as the boat moves closer, that shadow turns into an entrance, and the shift is immediate. This is when it becomes clear. El Nido is not a place you simply visit. It is a place you enter. The boat slows down. The light softens. The limestone cliffs grow taller on both sides, narrowing your view until the outside world quietly fades away. Conversations fall apart mid-sentence, not because there is nothing to say, but because words begin to feel heavy, and silence suddenly feels more accurate. The water beneath you changes again. The waves disappear. The surface becomes calm, almost glass-like, reflecting the cliffs above so perfectly that it feels like two worlds are meeting without sound. You lean forward without realizing it, watching the colors deepen, watching the space around you close in, not in a way that traps you, but in a way that protects you. And in that moment, without effort or intention, something inside you slows down, not because you planned it, but because this place quietly asks you to. And for once, you do not feel the need to resist. El Nido sits at the northern edge of Palawan, one of the longest islands in the Philippines, and even on a map, it already feels distant. Surrounded by sea on nearly every side, with dense forests stretching inland and open water spreading endlessly outward, this is a place that exists slightly apart from the rest of the country, both geographically and emotionally. Reaching El Nido is not difficult, but it is never instant. Whether arriving by air or by road, there is always a sense of gradual separation, a feeling that the familiar world is being left behind in layers. Cities fade into smaller towns, highways narrow into long coastal roads, and eventually, the journey ends at a shoreline where land quietly gives way to water. This distance is part of El Nido's character. It explains why the pace feels slower, why time seems less aggressive here, and why the landscape has remained so dramatic and intact. The town itself is modest, built along the curve of the bay, framed by steep hills and limestone cliffs that rise sharply behind it, creating a natural boundary between daily life and the wilderness beyond. Geographically, El Nido faces the South China Sea, opening directly into Bacuit Bay, a wide expanse filled with dozens of islands and rock formations scattered across calm, shallow waters. These formations are not random. They are the result of millions of years of geological change, where ancient coral reefs were lifted, eroded, and carved into the jagged limestone shapes that now define the region. Because of its position, El Nido feels both exposed and protected at the same time. Exposed to open sea, shifting weather, and changing light, yet protected by its natural barriers. hidden coves, and enclosed lagoons. This balance shapes everything, from the way boats move through the bay to the way the town itself developed, always oriented toward the water. Life here has grown outward rather than upward. Buildings remain low, streets stay narrow. The sea is never far from view. Even when standing inland, the sound of water and wind feels close, as if the ocean is always just beyond the next corner. El Nido's location also explains why it feels less like a destination designed for visitors and more like a place that happens to welcome them. There is no grand entrance, no dramatic sign announcing arrival. Instead, the town reveals itself gradually, through movement, through light, and through the constant presence of the bay. This sense of being at the edge of something, at the boundary between land and sea, civilization and nature, is what gives El Nido its quiet intensity. It is not isolated in a way that feels empty, but distant in a way that feels intentional, as if the landscape itself chose to remain just far enough away to protect what matters most. El Nido is shaped by the sky as much as it is shaped by limestone and sea, and understanding the seasons here is less about planning perfectly and more about knowing what kind of mood the islands will give you. The same bay can feel like two completely different worlds, depending on the month, the wind, and the way the clouds gather over the horizon. Most travelers talk about El Nido in terms of dry season and rainy season, but what that really means is simple. There are months when the water stays calmer, the days feel clearer, and island hopping runs like a steady rhythm. And there are months when the weather becomes unpredictable, when the sea turns rough, and when the sky reminds you that this landscape is still wild and not fully under anyone's control. During the drier months, the light is sharper, the colors in the water appear brighter, and the outlines of the cliffs feel more dramatic against a clean sky. Mornings often begin calm, with gentle movement on the surface, and tours leave the shore in a long line of boats, heading into the bay as if following an unspoken routine that everyone already understands. This is the season when El Nido looks most like the images people carry in their head. The turquoise lagoons, the quiet coves, the bright sand, the sunlight slipping across limestone like a slow flame. But calm weather also brings crowds, because the same conditions that make the bay beautiful also make it accessible. And El Nido's most iconic spots are not hidden from the world anymore. In peak months, the lagoons can feel like a shared stage, a place where beauty is still real, but no longer private, and the experience depends on timing, leaving earlier, moving with intention, and knowing when to pause and when to keep going. When the wetter months arrive, the story changes. The sky becomes heavier, and the ocean begins to shift. Rain does not always fall all day. Sometimes it comes in quick bursts, turning the air cooler for an hour, then disappearing like it was never there. But the wind can be stronger, the waves can rise suddenly, and some routes become less consistent, because safety starts to matter more than the plan. The bay is still stunning, sometimes even more so, because the cliffs look darker, the clouds add drama, and the landscape feels raw again. But the pace becomes slower, and not every day is guaranteed to unfold the way you imagined. This is why the best time to visit El Nido is not only about sunshine, it is about what you want from the journey. If you want the clearest skies, the calmest waters, and the highest chance of completing every island hopping route, the drier months are your safest bet. If you want fewer people, a quieter town, and a version of El Nido that feels less performed and more personal, then the shoulder months, when the weather is still reasonable but the crowds begin to thin, can feel like a secret in plain sight. In the end, El Nido does not offer one perfect season. It offers different versions of itself, and the one you meet will depend on the month you choose, the weather you accept, and how patient you are willing to be with the sea. El Nido Town does not try to compete with the landscapes around it, and that is exactly why it works. Set along the curve of the bay, pressed gently between the sea and the hills behind it, the town exists as a practical center rather than a spectacle, a place designed for movement, rest, and preparation, not distraction. Most days here begin early. As the light spreads across the water, boats start lining up along the shore, crews checking ropes, fuel, and supplies, while travelers gather with towels, dry bags, and quiet excitement. The town wakes up in stages, with cafes opening their doors, small shops lifting their shutters, and the sound of engines slowly replacing the stillness of the early morning. There is a functional rhythm to El Nido town. This is where tours are booked, gear is packed, and plans are adjusted according to weather and sea conditions. The streets are narrow, sometimes uneven, and always alive with small movements. Motorcycles passing carefully, people walking barefoot with salt still on their skin, and vendors setting up for another long day by the water. Nothing feels rushed, but nothing feels idle either. What gives the town its character is its relationship with the bay. No matter where you stand, the sea feels close. Boats are always in view, either arriving, departing, or resting quietly near the shore. The horizon becomes part of daily life, not something reserved for special moments. Even meals are often eaten facing the water, with tables set just far enough from the tide to stay dry, but close enough to hear the waves. As the day moves on and tours return, the town shifts again. Wet clothes are draped over railings, cameras are checked, stories begin to surface, and the energy softens. Afternoons feel slower, heavier with heat, and shaded spots become valuable. Some people disappear into their rooms for a brief rest, while others stay near the beach, watching boats unload and crews rinse salt from the decks. Evenings bring a different atmosphere. The sun drops behind the limestone silhouettes, turning the bay darker and calmer, and the town gathers itself for the night. Lights come on along the shoreline, music drifts from open spaces, and the smell of grilled seafood begins to spread through the streets. Conversations grow longer, movements become less purposeful. The day, which began with direction, now settles into reflection. El Nido town is not meant to be the highlight of the journey. It is meant to support it. It gives structure to days spent on the water and offers a place to return to, a point of grounding after hours surrounded by cliffs, lagoons, and open sea. Without this base camp, the experience would feel scattered. With it, everything connects. This balance between simplicity and function, between rest and readiness, is what makes El Nido town quietly essential. It does not ask for attention. It simply holds everything together, allowing the landscapes beyond it to take the lead. If El Nido is mentioned in a conversation, it rarely takes long before certain words appear. Lagoons, limestone, island hopping, paradise. At first, it can sound like the usual travel vocabulary, the kind of language people use when they are trying to sell a destination. But El Nido is one of those places where the cliches exist for a reason, because what people describe is not a concept. It is a pattern you will keep seeing again and again the moment you step onto the water. The most common story begins with Bacuit Bay, the wide expanse in front of the town where dozens of islands are scattered like fragments of stone dropped into the sea. The islands are not soft or gentle. They are sharp, vertical, and dramatic, with cliffs that rise suddenly from shallow water, creating hidden pockets of space where beaches disappear behind rock walls and lagoons remain protected from the open ocean. Even before you know the names of the islands, you start to understand why this bay became famous, because the landscape does not just look beautiful, it looks engineered to be explored. Then there is the way people talk about the water. It is not only clear, it is expressive. In open areas, it turns bright and tropical, almost glowing under the sun, while in narrow passages, it becomes darker, calmer, and more reflective, as if the sea changes personality depending on the shape of the cliffs around it. When you move through Bacuit Bay, you do not travel across a single body of water. You pass through different moods. This is why island hopping is not simply an activity here. It is the structure of El Nido itself. The bay is too complex to be understood from the shore, and the best parts of it are hidden behind limestone walls, accessible only by boat, sometimes only by kayak, and sometimes only by swimming through a narrow opening where the light suddenly drops and the sound of the outside world disappears. People also talk about El Nido as if it is a collection of secrets. Secret lagoon, hidden beach, secret beach. The names can sound dramatic, but the experience behind them is real, because many of these places are literally concealed by rock formations, and until you round a cliff or enter a narrow passage, you cannot see what is waiting inside. The surprise is built into the geography. At the same time, El Nido is not only about surprise, it is about contrast. One moment you are surrounded by massive walls of limestone, with water so still it feels like glass, and the next you are out in open sea, with wind on your face and islands stretching across the horizon. One moment everything is quiet enough to hear your own breath, and the next you are laughing on a beach with strangers who have become familiar in a single day. This is why the first things people say about El Nido do not feel like exaggerations once you arrive. The language may sound familiar, but the reality behind it is sharper than expected. El Nido earns its reputation by repeating the same message in different forms, again and again, until you stop questioning it. Sooner or later, every day in El Nido begins to revolve around the same question, not where to go, but which letter to choose. Tour A, Tour B, Tour C, Tour D. At first it sounds almost too simple, like a shortcut designed for tourists. But once you understand the geography of Bacuit Bay, the logic becomes clear, because the bay is too wide, too complex, and too full of hidden places for a single route to capture it all. Bacuit Bay is not one landscape. It is a collection of landscapes placed close together, where limestone islands rise in clusters, creating narrow channels, protected lagoons, and pockets of calm water that feel separate from the sea just beyond them. When you move through the bay by boat, you are not traveling in a straight line. You are weaving, turning, entering, exiting, and constantly shifting between open horizons and enclosed spaces where the cliffs lean closer and the water turns quiet. This is why the tours were organized into letters. Each letter points you toward a different personality of El Nido. Some routes are built around lagoons, where the experience is defined by still water, reflections, and the sensation of being inside stone walls. Some routes lean toward beaches, where the focus is bright sand, open sunlight, and the freedom of wide space. Others move toward caves and hidden corners, where you feel like you are passing through gaps in the landscape, discovering places that remain invisible until you are already inside them. The system also reflects something practical. The most iconic areas cannot all be visited at once, and conditions change daily. Wind direction matters, wave height matters, travel time matters. A route that feels effortless one day can feel rough the next, and the letters make it easier for crews to decide, adjust, and keep people safe while still delivering the experience they came for. In the morning, the tours begin the same way. People gather at the beach, names are called, groups form quickly, and the boats wait in shallow water, rocking gently as passengers climb aboard. There is a quiet urgency to it, not panic, but momentum, because everyone knows the day is limited and the best light arrives early. Sunscreen is applied again, dry bags are tightened, cameras are checked like they are passports. Then the town falls behind. The shoreline becomes smaller. The limestone formations ahead begin to grow taller, and the bay starts to unfold like a map that only reveals itself one section at a time. In a few minutes, the everyday world is gone, replaced by a landscape that feels carved, layered, and full of doors. Choosing a letter becomes more than choosing an itinerary. It becomes choosing a mood. Tour A is often the calm, iconic face of El Nido, defined by lagoons and sheltered spaces. Tour C tends to feel more dramatic, with stronger cliff scenery and swim stops that hit like postcards. Tour B often carries the feeling of exploration, with caves and quieter shorelines. Tour D for many, becomes the softer option, less intense, more relaxed, a way to let the bay speak without rushing through it. But no matter which letter you choose, the structure remains the same. You leave the town, you enter Bacuit Bay. You spend the day moving between water and rock, between open sea and hidden calm. And by the time you return to shore, you realize the letters were never the point. The point was that El Nido is too rich to be seen in one shape, so it offers itself in chapters. El Nido can feel like pure freedom, open water, open sky, islands scattered across the horizon. But what many visitors do not realize at first is that this beauty is not simply a gift. It is managed. It is protected. And the reason it still looks the way it does is because the bay has rules that quietly hold everything in place. Bacuit Bay was recognized as a marine reserve in the early 1990s and later expanded into a larger protected area, a decision that turned the landscape from a postcard into a responsibility. That history is not something you feel through a museum or a long explanation. You feel it through the small things that shape your day, the reminders before a tour starts, the limits on where boats can stop, the way guides repeat the same instructions, not as a performance, but as a routine that has to be followed. It shows up in signs posted near the shore, simple and direct, asking people not to step on coral, not to take shells, not to disturb wildlife, not to leave trash behind. It shows up in the way crews handle anchors carefully, choosing where to rest a boat so it does not damage the seabed. It shows up in the presence of people whose job is not to entertain, but to protect, reminding everyone that these islands are not a private playground. At first, rules can feel like friction, especially in a place that looks so wild and open. But in El Nido, the rules are part of the atmosphere. They remind you that the water is clear because it is still alive, and that the reefs remain colorful because they have not been treated like stone. They remind you that hidden beaches stay beautiful only as long as people do not treat them like disposable locations. There is also a quieter truth. In a protected place, your relationship with the landscape changes. You are not here to conquer it, to take from it, or to test how close you can get before something breaks. You are here to move through it carefully, to borrow its beauty for a few hours, and to leave it untouched enough for the next person to feel the same first shock you felt. This is why El Nido does not feel like a theme park. It feels like a living environment that is allowing you to enter on conditions that exist for a reason. And once you accept that, something shifts. You watch where your feet land. You keep your hands to yourself. You pay attention to what you carry and what you leave behind. You start to understand that what makes El Nido unforgettable is not only the limestone cliffs and the turquoise lagoons, but the fact that the place is still being defended quietly every single day. Tour A is often the first letter people choose in El Nido, and it is easy to understand why. Because this route carries the image that most people are secretly chasing: the calm lagoons, the limestone walls rising close on both sides, and the feeling that the ocean has folded itself into hidden rooms. The day usually begins with the same quiet urgency. Boats gather near the shoreline, crews move with routine confidence, and travelers step in with dry bags and sunscreen, still half asleep but already alert, because everyone has heard the same thing, that the best moments happen early, before the bay fills with noise and before the light becomes harsh. As the boat leaves town, Bacuit Bay starts to open in layers. The first minutes feel wide and open, with wind on your face and islands scattered ahead like dark silhouettes. But Tour A quickly turns inward. The boat begins to weave between limestone formations, and the space changes. The sea becomes calmer. The cliffs grow taller. The horizon disappears, replaced by corridors of rock and water that feel protected from everything outside. This is the core of Tour A, not speed, not distance, but transitions. Moving from open sea into sheltered water, then into something even more enclosed, where the engine slows, voices soften, and the surface begins to mirror the cliffs above. The lagoons do not announce themselves with signs or dramatic entrances. They appear gradually, through narrow openings, around corners that hide what is inside until the last second. There is usually a moment when the boat stops and people shift from watching to entering. Kayaks slide into the water, masks are adjusted, someone tests the temperature with a hand, and suddenly the day becomes quieter because lagoons demand a different kind of attention. You do not rush through them. You drift. You paddle slowly. You look up as much as you look down, because the scene is not only water, it is stone, light, and reflection working together. Tour A also carries a particular mood. It is not the wild, open, cinematic drama of waves and long coastlines. It is more intimate. The cliffs feel close enough to touch. The water feels calm enough to trust. And the space feels like it is holding you rather than challenging you. Even when there are other boats nearby, the lagoons still have a way of pulling your focus inward, making you forget the crowd for short stretches, because the environment feels so enclosed that your eyes have nowhere else to escape. This is why Tour A becomes the introduction many people remember most. It delivers El Nido in its most iconic form, not as a long list of places, but as a single repeating sensation, entering, slowing down, and realizing that the most impressive parts of the bay are not out in the open, but hidden in quiet water behind limestone walls. Big Lagoon is one of those places you hear about before you arrive, so iconic that it almost risks becoming familiar in your mind, like an image you have already seen too many times. But the first time you actually enter it, the mind resets. The scale is bigger than expected, the silence is heavier, and the water, calm and bright, has a clarity that makes the entire scene feel closer than it should. The approach often begins quietly. A boat slows near a limestone wall, and the entrance appears as a narrow opening where rock presses inward, shaping the water into a passage. From the outside, it looks like a simple gap, but once you move through, the space expands, and the lagoon reveals itself like a room that has been hidden behind a door. Inside, the limestone cliffs rise higher and closer than they looked from the sea. Their surfaces are rough and uneven, cut by time, stained by rain, and marked by sharp edges that catch the light differently with every small movement. The air feels still, the sound of the engine fades, and the water becomes the main character. It is not only blue, it is layered. Near the edges, it turns pale and shallow, almost milky with sand beneath, then deepens into richer shades as you move inward. Every paddle stroke leaves a soft disturbance that disappears quickly, as if the lagoon is trying to return to stillness the moment you stop touching it. Kayaking here changes the experience completely. On a boat, you watch Big Lagoon. In a kayak, you move through it. The rhythm becomes slower, more deliberate, and suddenly you notice details that do not exist at speed. Small ripples reflecting the cliffs, the way light breaks on the surface, the way the walls create shade that feels cool against the heat of the day. There is also a kind of quiet respect that settles over people in this place. Voices drop naturally, movements soften, even laughter becomes smaller. Not because anyone tells you to be silent, but because the lagoon itself creates that behavior, like a cathedral made of stone and water, where noise feels out of place. And yet, Big Lagoon does not feel fragile in a weak way. It feels ancient and patient. It has been carved over a timeline that makes human presence feel temporary, and that contrast is part of what makes the moment so powerful. You are floating in something that existed long before you, and will continue long after you leave, as long as it is treated with care. This is why Big Lagoon becomes a turning point for many people. It is the moment El Nido stops feeling like a travel video and starts feeling physical. The air, the water, the echo of cliffs, the softness of light, everything becomes real at once, and for a few minutes, you forget the rest of the route, forget the schedule, and simply stay inside the lagoon, letting it hold your attention completely. After Tour A, which often feels like entering quiet rooms of water and stone, Tour C can feel like El Nido stepping back and revealing a sharper face. The scenery becomes more intense. The coastline feels more exposed. The cliffs look higher, darker, and more aggressive in shape. And the day carries a different kind of energy, less about stillness and reflection, more about movement, contrast, and the feeling of being surrounded by raw geography. Tour C is often described as one of the most beautiful routes, but the beauty here has a different temperature. It is not only calm, it is striking. The boat rides can feel longer and more open, with stretches of sea where wind becomes part of the experience, where salt hits your skin more directly, and where islands appear like massive blocks rising out of the water, casting deep shadows that make the colors around them look even brighter. The stops on Tour C tend to feel like reveals. A beach is not simply a beach, but a hidden curve of sand that only becomes visible once you round a wall of limestone. A cove is not just a place to swim, but a pocket of water enclosed enough to feel protected while still looking out toward open sea. The route moves between these spaces in a way that keeps resetting your sense of scale, so that every time you think you understand how big the cliffs are, you arrive at another angle that makes them feel taller. Swimming and snorkeling on Tour C often feels more alive. The water can be deeper, the currents can be slightly stronger depending on conditions, and the sensation of floating near rock formations that rise straight out of the sea can be strangely humbling. You are not only looking at the landscape, you are inside it, surrounded by stone above and water below, with nothing artificial in between. There is also a particular kind of excitement that Tour C creates in groups. People talk more, they point more. The camera comes out more often, not because Tour A was not beautiful, but because Tour C looks like it wants to be captured, with stronger lines, stronger colors, and a sense of drama that feels cinematic even without trying. But what makes Tour C memorable is not only the visuals, it is the rhythm of the day, the way the boat leaves town and immediately commits to the open bay, the way the ride itself becomes part of the story, the way the stops arrive like chapters, each one different in shape and mood, and the way, by late afternoon, the sun begins to soften again, turning the cliffs warmer, making the harshness feel gentler, and reminding you that even the most dramatic landscapes still change with light. Tour C shows a version of El Nido that feels louder, not in sound, but in presence. It is the route that makes you feel the full weight of the limestone world, the scale of the bay, and the feeling of being very small in a place that was never designed to be controlled.
If Tour A is about quiet lagoons and Tour C leans into drama, Tour B often feels like a different direction entirely, less focused on the grand open view and more focused on what is hidden, what is enclosed, and what you can only understand by moving closer. This is the route where El Nido starts to feel like a place with interiors, not just surfaces. The mood changes the moment you approach a cave. The limestone walls that looked like scenery from a distance suddenly become architecture. Open water narrows, light drops, sound behaves differently. The engine hum feels louder for a second, then fades as the boat slows, and your attention shifts from horizon to detail, from wide sky to the texture of rock. Sometimes you enter by stepping off the boat and walking carefully over stone. Sometimes you swim through a gap where the water is darker and cooler, and the feeling is immediate, as if you have crossed a threshold into a private chamber. The space inside is not always large, but it rarely feels empty. Shapes hang from ceilings, the rock curves inward like it is holding its breath, and the light, coming from a small opening behind you, turns everything into contrast. Tour B is also the route where you start to notice how El Nido plays with visibility. From the outside, a cliff looks solid, a shoreline looks continuous, but once you move along it, you find breaks, passages, and entrances that were invisible until you were almost on top of them. It is a geography built on concealment, where the most interesting parts do not advertise themselves. This is why the beaches on Tour B often feel different as well. They can be calmer, tucked behind rock formations, appearing suddenly after a short swim or a short walk through a narrow space. The sand can feel cooler in the shade of cliffs. The water can feel quieter, like it belongs to a separate pocket of the bay, protected from the wind and the noise outside. And then there's the way these stops affect the group. People become more careful, they watch where they step, they lower their voices without thinking. The experience is not just about beauty, but about navigation, about moving correctly through a place that feels delicate and unfamiliar. And that small shift in behavior makes the day feel more personal, more immersive. Tour B does not always produce the loudest photos. It does not always deliver the biggest wow in one instant the way a lagoon can, but it leaves a different mark. It gives you the feeling that El Nido is not only a postcard world of cliffs and turquoise water, it is also a world with hidden rooms, with spaces carved into stone, with quiet corners that make you slow down and pay attention.
By the time you return to the boat, you often carry a subtle change. You have seen El Nido from the inside. And once you know that the landscape has interiors, the bay stops feeling like scenery and starts feeling like a place with depth, one that still keeps parts of itself out of view until you earn the angle. Tour D is often described as the quieter choice, the route people take when they want something lighter, less intense, less crowded. And in many ways, that description is accurate, but it can also make the tour sound like a compromise, as if choosing D means choosing less. In reality, Tour D is not about less beauty. It is about a different pace, a different texture of the bay, and a different kind of day. After the stronger signatures of the other routes, lagoons that feel like hidden rooms, cliffs that feel like drama, caves that feel like interiors, Tour D leans into simplicity. The stops tend to feel more open and breathable. The transitions feel smoother. The bay feels less like a sequence of shocks and more like a continuous flow, where the goal is not to chase the most iconic frame, but to stay in the water, stay in the light, and let the place settle into you. The mornings on Tour D still begin early with the same routine on the shore, the same dry bags, the same sunscreen, the same names being called. But once the boat leaves town, the energy shifts. The ride feels calmer, the conversation stays more relaxed. There is less of the unspoken pressure to reach something before everyone else does, and that changes how people behave. They look around more, they settle in, they stop performing the trip for the camera and start living inside it. The beaches on this route often become the main memory, not because they are louder than the other beaches, but because Tour D gives you time to actually be there, time to walk the sand slowly instead of rushing for a photo, time to swim without immediately thinking about the next stop, time to sit in shade and feel the heat fade from your skin while the bay moves gently in front of you. There is also something about a slower route that makes the details stronger. You notice the way the water changes color even when nothing else changes. You notice how the wind shifts the surface into different patterns. You notice the small routines of the crew, cutting fruit, rinsing gear, tying rope with the same quiet precision. The day becomes less about highlights and more about atmosphere. Tour D is where El Nido can feel most human. The group bonds more naturally because the schedule leaves space for it. People talk about where they're from, what they saw yesterday, what they hope to see tomorrow, and these conversations become part of the experience, not interruptions from it. By afternoon, the boat ride back can feel almost meditative. Sun on your shoulders, salt on your skin, tiredness in your body that feels earned, not drained.
This is why Tour D matters. It reminds you that El Nido is not only impressive in its most iconic moments, it is also beautiful when you stop chasing, when you allow the bay to be gentle, when you accept that the trip does not have to be intense to be unforgettable. Sometimes the softer version is the one that stays with you longer, because it gives you space to actually feel where you are. El Nido is famous for what rises above the surface: limestone walls, sharp silhouettes, islands that look like they were cut out of stone. But the bay has a second identity that most people only understand once they slip into the water. The moment your face goes below the surface, the world changes. The noise becomes muted, the light becomes softer, and the landscape that felt massive from the boat becomes detailed, textured, and alive. Snorkeling here often feels effortless, not because the sea is empty, but because life appears quickly and close. In many spots, you do not need to swim far from the boat before you begin to see coral formations spreading across the seabed, uneven and layered, sometimes dense like a rough garden, sometimes scattered like broken pieces of sculpture. Fish move through these spaces in flashes of color, quick and sudden, gathering near edges, then disappearing into the shadows created by rock and reef. The clarity of the water makes the experience feel intimate. You do not have to dive deep to see movement. You float and watch the bay reveal itself beneath you, schools of small fish tightening and loosening like they are breathing together, larger shapes passing more slowly at a distance, seagrass swaying gently with the current, softening the hard geometry of limestone above. What makes snorkeling in El Nido different is the way it fits naturally into the rhythm of a tour. It is not treated like a separate event. It happens between stops, when the boat engine cuts and the water looks inviting. Masks are passed around, fins are adjusted, someone points over the side. Then people slide in, one by one, and for a while the group becomes quiet, each person moving at their own pace, suspended in a world that feels calmer than the surface. Time behaves differently underwater. Minutes stretch, breathing becomes steady, the mind settles into simple focus, watching, floating, turning slowly, following a fish for a few seconds, then drifting toward another patch of coral. When you lift your head again, you see the cliffs still towering above you, unchanged, and that contrast is strange and beautiful. Stone so permanent and heavy, water so fluid and alive. Not every snorkeling spot is dramatic, and that is part of what makes it real. Some areas are subtle, defined by small motions and quiet colors, while others surprise you with sudden density, a burst of life that appears without warning. Together, they form a layer of El Nido that most people never fully describe because photos rarely capture the feeling of floating above something living. This underwater world is what completes the bay. Without it, El Nido would still look stunning, but it would feel flatter, more like scenery. With it, the place gains depth, literally and emotionally, reminding you that Bacuit Bay is not only something to admire from a boat, but a living space that continues quietly below the surface, asking you to look closer, to move slower, and to remember that beauty here is not only seen, it is alive. There is a point in El Nido when the engine noise disappears and the bay changes its expression. The moment you leave the boat and sit low on a kayak, everything becomes closer. The water feels more immediate, the limestone walls feel higher, and the world that looked like a postcard from a distance starts to feel like a place you are actually inside. Kayaking is not just an activity here, it is a different way of entering Bacuit Bay. Boats can bring you to the famous spots, but a kayak brings you into the spaces between them, the narrow passages, the edges of lagoons, the quiet corners where the water turns darker and calmer and the cliffs begin to lean inward. This is where El Nido becomes less public and more intimate, even if there are other people nearby, because the pace is suddenly yours. The rhythm is simple: paddle, pause, drift, listen. Each stroke makes a soft sound in the water, and then silence returns immediately, as if the bay is swallowing noise the moment it is created. Without the motor, you start to hear everything else:
The small ripple against the kayak, the wind touching the surface, the distant echo of voices bouncing off stone. Sometimes, if the bay is calm enough, you can hear the sound of water moving inside the cliff shadows, a subtle, continuous motion that feels older than any boat route. This is also when you notice how light behaves here. In open water, sunlight is strong and direct, but in narrow limestone corridors, the light breaks and softens. It slides along rock edges. It turns the water into a mirror. It creates pockets of shade that feel cooler against your skin, making the space feel like it has temperature changes, like it has different rooms. Kayaking forces you to slow down in a way that no schedule can. You cannot rush through a lagoon without feeling it. You cannot skim across the surface without noticing how clear it is. You become aware of your own movement, your own breath, your own balance, and this awareness makes the landscape feel closer because the distance between you and the environment has been removed.
For many people, this becomes the most memorable part of the day, not because it is the most dramatic visually, but because it feels personal. On a boat, you share the view with everyone. In a kayak, you share it with yourself. You can stop whenever you want. You can follow a wall of limestone slowly. You can drift in a quiet pocket and watch reflections change. You can sit still long enough to forget you are on a tour at all. And this is the quiet power of kayaking in El Nido. It is not about going far, it is about going deep into the feeling of the place. It gives you a moment where the bay stops being a destination and becomes an experience you carry inside your body. The slow rhythm of paddling, the soft silence, and the sense that for a short time, El Nido belongs only to the present moment. In El Nido, the day often ends the same way, not with a final tour stop or a last checklist, but with light. After hours of salt and sun, after the movement of boats and the shifting scenery of Bacuit Bay, the evening arrives like a slow release, and suddenly the town, the water, and the limestone silhouettes all begin to change at once. Sunset here is not a single moment, it is a process. The sky fades from bright to warm, then to softer tones that stretch across the horizon, and the bay responds immediately. Water that looked turquoise in the afternoon begins to darken, turning into a deeper, reflective surface, catching the color of the sky like a quiet mirror. The cliffs, which felt sharp and dramatic under midday light, become gentler at the edges, their harsh lines softened by gold and shadow. This is usually when people drift back toward the shoreline. Some sit on the sand with wet hair and tired shoulders. Some walk slowly along the beach, letting the last heat of the day leave their skin. Others simply stand near the water and watch the boats return, because the return itself becomes part of the scene. Crews guide their boats through shallow water, engines cut, rope hits sand, the bay settles. There is a particular kind of silence that comes with sunset in a place like this. Not complete silence, not the absence of sound, but a quieter mood, where voices naturally lower and movements become slower. Conversations turn from excitement to reflection. People start comparing what they saw, but with less urgency, because the day has already happened and now it is being stored. The light keeps shifting. Sometimes clouds catch it and turn the sky into layered color, orange, pink, deep purple, with the limestone islands standing dark against it like ink shapes. Sometimes the sky stays clean and the sun drops in a simple line, and the beauty comes from how quickly everything changes. Either way, it feels like a closing scene, as if the bay is gently ending the chapter and preparing for the next morning. What makes sunset in El Nido memorable is not only the view, it is the feeling that the place is calming down with you. After a day of chasing lagoons and beaches, the evening gives you permission to stop. It gives you a natural ending, a moment where you do not need to plan or move or decide. You just watch, you breathe, you let your body feel tired in a good way. And when the sun finally disappears, the last light lingering on the water for a few seconds longer, you realize something simple.
The beauty of El Nido is not only in its dramatic landscapes, it is also in how gently it knows how to end a day.
After a full day on the water, hunger in El Nido feels different. It is not the kind that wants something complicated. It is the kind that wants something warm, salty, and real. Something that matches the day you just lived. And because the town sits right on the edge of the bay, the food here often carries the same identity as the place itself. Simple, coastal, and shaped by what the sea can offer. In the evening, the town changes texture. The air cools slightly. Lights appear along the shoreline. People drift out of their rooms and back onto the streets, still damp from the ocean, still carrying that tired, sun-soaked feeling. Restaurants and small stalls begin to fill, and the smell of grilled seafood becomes part of the background, smoke and salt mixing in the same breath. Seafood is the natural center. Fish grilled until the skin blisters slightly, served with rice and a squeeze of something sour. Squid cooked quickly, tender if timed right, smoky if over the flame a little longer. Shrimp that tastes sweeter after a day of salt water. Nothing needs to be overly decorated because the flavor is already connected to the environment. Island hopping lunches can feel even more direct. On many tours, meals happen on a beach, prepared by the crew, cooked with practical rhythm. Rice, vegetables, fresh fruit, and seafood laid out in simple portions while waves move in the background. People eat with their hands sometimes, not because they have to, but because it feels appropriate, because the setting makes formality unnecessary. There are also flavors that remind you you are in the Philippines, dishes that lean slightly sweet, slightly sour, slightly salty, balancing comfort with brightness. Simple soups and stews that feel heavier at night. Small snacks in between meals, bought on the street, eaten while walking back toward the water. The town may be small, but it still holds enough choices to make each night feel like its own small routine. What matters most is not the menu itself, it is the feeling of eating here. Sitting near the bay, hearing waves even when you are not looking at them, watching the town move slowly around you, and realizing that food becomes the quiet bridge between adventure and rest. The day was water, cliffs, movement. The night becomes warmth, smoke, conversation. And in that moment, with salt still on your skin and the smell of grilled seafood in the air, El Nido stops being only a destination you explored. It becomes a place you are living in, at least for a night, with the simplest proof possible, a meal that tastes like the sea. Part of what makes El Nido feel special is that you do not simply appear there, you travel into it. Even in a world where almost everything can be reached quickly, El Nido still asks for a little patience, and that patience becomes part of the story, because the farther you go, the more the arrival starts to feel like something you earned.
Most journeys begin with the same decision, whether to arrive by air, by road, or by a combination of both. Flying is the fastest way, the cleanest cut between your old world and this one, but it can also feel like skipping chapters. You land, you step out, and suddenly you are in the bay, as if the distance never existed. The road journey feels different. It stretches time in a way that prepares you. From Puerto Princesa, the route north runs for hours, passing through smaller towns, long coastal sections, and inland roads where forest and hills dominate the view. It is not always dramatic scenery, but it is steady, and that steadiness gives you a sense of how far El Nido sits from the main centers of the Philippines. When the van finally approaches the town, you can feel the geography changing, the air turning saltier, the light widening, the sea starting to appear more often at the edges of your vision. Some travelers arrive through San Vicente or Port Barton, breaking the journey into slower pieces, letting Palawan reveal itself in stages.
Others come from Coron, crossing by sea and treating the route itself like an extension of island life, where the horizon becomes the road and the boat becomes the vehicle. Each route carries a different mood, but all of them share the same effect. They make El Nido feel like the edge of something, not in a lonely way, but in a way that preserves its atmosphere. Once you arrive, the town feels immediately oriented around movement. Vans unload bags, tricycles weave through narrow streets. People walk with sun hats and dry bags like they are already halfway into tomorrow's tour. And very quickly, the question becomes simple. How early will you start? Which letter will you choose? Which part of the bay will you enter first? Transportation in El Nido is not luxurious, it is practical. It is built around function and timing rather than comfort, and that matches the character of the place. You are not here to be carried gently, you are here to reach the water, reach the islands, and spend your days outside.
That is why the journey matters. Not because it is difficult, but because it creates separation. It pulls you out of the regular rhythm of life and into a slower one, where travel is not an inconvenience, but a transition. By the time you step onto the shoreline and see boats lined up against the bay, you understand that El Nido is not a place you stumble into. It is a place you travel toward, and that distance is part of why it stays with you. El Nido looks effortless in videos, but the actual experience is built on small decisions you make before you ever step onto a boat. The bay is beautiful, but it is also bright, salty, wet, and constantly moving, and that combination turns tiny mistakes into long discomforts. This is why a simple checklist matters, not because you need to over-prepare, but because the right few items can quietly protect the entire day. The first thing is sun protection. The light here is strong, especially on the water, where reflection doubles the exposure and heat builds without warning. Sunscreen is not optional, neither is reapplying it, even when you think you are already covered. A hat helps more than people expect. Sunglasses matter, and a thin layer you can throw over your shoulders can be the difference between a good afternoon and a painful one. The second thing is water protection. Not for you, but for your stuff. El Nido is a place where everything gets wet eventually, whether it's from swimming, splashes, sudden rain, or the simple fact that a boat is never perfectly dry. A dry bag becomes the most valuable object you carry because it turns chaos into order. Phone, wallet, camera, extra shirt, everything that should not be soaked belongs inside it, sealed before the boat even moves. Footwear is another quiet saver. Many stops involve stepping onto rocks, coral fragments, or uneven sand. Barefoot feels romantic until you cut your foot in the first 5 minutes. Water shoes or sandals with grip make the entire tour easier. They also change how confident you feel moving through caves, beaches, and shallow reef areas where the ground is unpredictable. Then there are the small health items people only think about after they need them. Motion sickness tablets if you know the sea affects you, a small towel or quick-dry cloth, a reusable bottle to stay hydrated without constantly buying plastic, a little cash because not every place runs smoothly on cards, and island days often require quick payments without time for discussion. A snorkeling mask can be rented, but if you have one that fits your face, bringing it changes the experience. Fit matters underwater. Comfort matters. The same is true for a light waterproof phone case if you want to record without stress. These are not luxury items, they are friction removers, things that allow you to stay present instead of constantly managing risk. The last part of the checklist is mental. El Nido rewards flexibility. Weather changes, routes change, timing shifts, boats wait, people move slower. If you treat the day like a strict schedule, you will fight it. If you treat it like an unfolding experience, you will enjoy it. The best preparation is knowing that the bay sets the pace, not you. This is why the checklist is not about control, it is about freedom. It is about removing the small problems that steal attention so the real experience can take the lead. The water, the limestone, the light,
and the feeling of being far away from everything that usually demands you. By the time you reach the later days of a trip in El Nido, something usually becomes clear without anyone needing to explain it. The bay still feels alive, the water is still clear, the limestone still looks sharp and untouched, and that does not happen by accident. It happens because this place survives on restraint, awareness, and a quiet agreement between the land and the people who pass through it. El Nido is not frozen in time, but it is protected by intention. The rules you encounter are not there to limit enjoyment. They are there to make enjoyment possible in the first place. Without them, the lagoons would cloud, the reefs would fade, the beaches would lose the feeling of discovery that makes them special. What you experience today is the result of years of choosing preservation over convenience. Responsible travel here is not traumatic, it is practical. It is watching where you step when you enter the water. It is keeping your hands off coral, even when it looks solid. It is resisting the urge to take something small because it feels harmless. In a place as sensitive as Bacuit Bay, small actions accumulate quickly, and the difference between care and carelessness is measured in years, not moments. It also means understanding your role as a visitor. You are not here to extract the best version of El Nido for yourself. You are here to share it, briefly, with thousands of others who came before and will come after you. That perspective changes behavior. You move more gently. You listen more carefully. You accept that some places need limits to remain what they are. There is a quiet respect in that kind of travel. It does not announce itself. It does not demand recognition. It simply allows a place to keep its character. When you follow the guidance of the crews, respect the boundaries of protected areas, and treat the environment as something borrowed rather than owned, you become part of the reason El Nido still feels open instead of exhausted.
This mindset extends beyond the water, supporting local businesses, reducing waste, choosing operators who care about safety and sustainability. These choices may feel small, but together they shape the future of the bay more than any single rule or regulation ever could. In the end, responsible travel in El Nido is not about sacrifice, it is about understanding value. The cliffs, the lagoons, the underwater life, the silence, all of it exists in a balance that can be broken easily but repaired slowly. The fact that you can still experience this place in its current form is proof that care works. And when you leave, the most respectful thing you can do is simple. Take the memory, leave the place unchanged. Let El Nido continue to feel like El Nido for the next person who steps onto the shore, expecting nothing and discovering everything. El Nido does not end when the trip ends. It ends later, in smaller moments, when you are back in ordinary life and something suddenly reminds you of the bay, a certain color of water, a certain kind of light, the sound of waves against wood, the feeling of warm salt drying on your skin. That is how you know a place has stayed with you. It keeps returning without permission. On the surface, it is easy to say why El Nido is unforgettable. The limestone cliffs are dramatic, the lagoons feel unreal, the beaches look like secrets, the island hopping routes turn each day into a sequence of discoveries. But what makes it linger is not only the scenery, it is the rhythm the scenery forces you to adopt. In El Nido, you start early without resentment. You move with the sea instead of against it. You accept that plans can shift with weather and wind. You learn patience without being taught. You learn silence without being asked. The bay does not demand transformation, but it invites it quietly by showing you what happens when life slows down and becomes simple again. There is also something about the structure of the experience. You do not consume El Nido in one moment. You enter it in chapters. Tour letters become days, days become moods, lagoons become memories, sunsets become closures, and somewhere in the middle of all of that, the place stops being a list of locations and becomes a feeling you carry.
When you look back, the details blur in the way they always do. You may forget which beach was which, you may mix the names of islands, but you will remember the atmosphere, the way the cliffs rose like walls, the way the water shifted color like it was alive, the way a narrow entrance opened into calm space, the way your body softened into the pace of the bay. That is why El Nido stays. It is not only beautiful, it is corrective. It reminds you that the world still holds places where nature sets the rules, where the most powerful experience is not noise or speed, but stillness, light, and the feeling of being small in a landscape that does not need you. And when it is time to leave, the farewell is rarely dramatic. You pack your bag, you check out, you step into a van, a tricycle, a boat, whatever carries you back toward the world you came from. The town becomes smaller, the bay disappears behind hills, the journey reverses. But the exit does not erase the impression. You carry it with you, the taste of the sea, the color of the water, the silence of a lagoon, the softness of sunset, and the simple understanding that some places do not belong to the same earth you wake up on every morning. El Nido is one of them.